I didn't do any creative like duck down intro thing. I feel like it's too late to dance now. Like I
It's
can,
definitely
be
too
like,
late.
yeah, but it's whatever.
The moment has passed.
Welcome everyone to the MMA Vivisection with me, Zane Simon, and my woodshop teacher slash co-host, Connor Rebush, with his mustache, returning once again. We are here to talk to you this week about UFC on Fox 28, UFC on Fox Emmett vs. Stevens, UFC Orlando, UFC fight card taking place this week.
Yep. That's probably the best possible summation of this card. It is the one that's happening this week.
Yeah. I've heard a little pushback of like, oh, it's not that bad or whatever. Man, like, I wasn't excited a little way out from this card. And a lot of times I work myself into some excitement. Like, by the time I'm actually looking over the tape and getting ready, looking at all the fights and all the ways these things can go, I'm like, oh, you know what? This is actually going to be pretty good. Like, I was actually excited for Cerrone Medeiros, and that card turned out great, top to bottom. That was a fun, action-filled fight card. I'm not excited about this still. Like, there's still just not much that does it for me. A lot of it is that there's a lot of fighters here that have major gaps in their game that make, like, it makes there be even less meaning in the fight than I want there to be.
Mm-hmm. Because you're not going into all these matchups with tons of questions. Like,
yeah,
I have no idea what's going to happen. It's more like, well, if this happens, then this will almost certainly happen.
Exactly.
Here.
Or, yeah, if so-and-so wins, it does absolutely nothing for their career and for the division or whatever. And
even for a card like last week's card, the fact that people like you and I have to work ourselves into excitement by studying the footage of these fighters, that's bad. That's not, a promotion should not have that as their desired result.
No.
Right? Because that means people who have no reason to study the footage of the fighters are not going to be invested. They are not going to, there is no surface level story for them to latch onto. But when it's a supposedly bigger card like this, a Fox card, and you have all of these fights, yeah, some of these are fine, and some of these are important fights, like Andrade Torres, the co-main event. That's an important fight for its division.
Likely the next title challenger after Joanna versus Namajunas, assuming Joanna doesn't win that, and then we probably get a trilogy fight.
Yeah, depressing as it is, OSP Latifi is an important fight too, because light heavyweight is a division.
That is exactly, though, one of the fights that I'm talking about, where it's just like, I know exactly what is wrong with each of these fighters and why they might lose, and like neither of them winning is going to change what is wrong with them.
Yeah, but the overall, this whole card is building towards Jeremy Stephens versus Josh Emmett. Jeremy Stephens, who I think everyone agrees, and maybe he has what it takes to work himself into a higher position, but everyone agrees is like right around that number 10 mark of the top 10 featherweights in the world, right between 5 and 10. That's where Jeremy Stephens seems to belong. And Josh Emmett is not established in any way. So there is absolutely nothing to latch onto here with Josh Emmett, who credit to him, but essentially sort of stumbled into a top 5 ranking in this division.
Yeah, I mean, Emmett beating Ricardo Lamas. It was a legit win. He went out and he punished Ricardo Lamas for being kind of a technically lackadaisical fighter moment to moment, which has always been a problem with Lamas. It's just never been one he's paid for like that, or rarely been one he's paid for like that.
Yeah, you can't question the legitimacy of the win, but you can question like what comes out of it.
How many top 10 fighters does Josh Emmett beat? Like, that's the question. We don't know that, and maybe we'll find out. I mean, if he beats Jeremy Stephens or if he loses to Jeremy Stephens, like, this is a good measuring stick for that. But the thing is that for a Fox headliner, there are already 2 title contenders ahead of these 2 in that division right now. 3, if Cub Swanson keeps winning, and like, you want to give him a shot because he's got he's on one of the better streaks in the division. But Frankie Edgar and Brian Ortega are both the title contenders. It was supposed to be Edgar gets the shot, Ortega waits, gets the next shot. Now they're fighting each other for but neither Emmett nor Stephens off a win here are in title contention.
No. And if Emmett does win, you can say that does establish him more in the featherweight division, but you don't want your
top 10 featherweight.
But you don't want your main event to become interesting and compelling in retrospect. You want to have a narrative going in to the card, and that's what we're lacking here.
Yeah. So, beyond that, we should dive into the bottom.
Let's do it.
Seems like just a follow-up to be the next lowest rated Fox card ever, whether it's lower rated than the last one or just a little higher.
Like I said on Heavy Hands this week, it is as if the UFC brass looked at Jacare Brunson 2, heard all of our complaints, and the matchmaker said, "Hold my beer, because you haven't seen nothing yet."
Yeah. So let's dive in right to the bottom of this. And Albert Morales versus Manny Bermudez.
Manny Bermudez is I have a lot of questions about Manny Bermudez, right? Like watching his fights, there's a lot to like. He seems extremely dangerous with his submission game. He especially with his mounted triangle, that's kind of a specialty of his. And it's a very effective when he locks it up tight. He puts people to sleep in seconds. Seems to have a phenomenal squeeze. But a lot of his fights, at least the ones that are available online, like you don't get to see a lot of Manny Bermudez in action. You get to see that he's got a sharp jab, that he's got a nice straight right hand, and that he puts the two of them together. And then you get to see that when the opportunity arises, he hits a submission.
Yeah.
But it does seem very opportunistic up to this point.
Well, I mean, it's really weird anytime you're watching a dude who's a first round submission machine. Like that is just not an MMA archetype. Yeah. There are plenty of dangerous submission fighters who can hit a submission at any time and have won a bunch of fights like that. And there are plenty of first round finishers who get knockouts and just overwhelm people early. But the dude who always has opponents shoot in on them and gets a standing guillotine.
Especially because, as you just alluded to, he's not a great wrestler.
No.
He's got some trip takedowns from the clinch. That seems to be his go-to, but he is not his wrestling does not jump off the page, so to speak. So we have somebody who just seems to be like having opponents who give him their necks over and over. And I don't know until I have more evidence to suggest how Bermudez deals with adversity, how he deals with an opponent who approaches him differently. I think I have to pick somebody like Albert Morales over him. Morales is shaky. He's not super strong. He doesn't seem to be necessarily that durable, at least early on. He gets caught cold quite a bit, but he's also still young. And I think he has been making improvements from fight to fight. If you go back to Morales' first UFC fight, or the bout with Thomas Almeida, and you compare that to how he adjusted to Benito Lopez, like I thought he won the Benito Lopez fight. I thought he won the last 2 rounds. It was close. It's really the thing that he struggled with was the kicking of Benito Lopez, and that has been an issue for him several times. Opponents who kick well. I don't know if Manny Bermudez has either the volume or the kicking game to threaten him on the feet. And Morales is a pretty good grappler. And the thing is, Bermudez has submitted good grapplers, but it just seems like they just give it to him.
Yeah.
So there's so little resistance to base my assessment off of in his case.
I'm actually going to pick Bermudez based on one of the things you said just a minute ago, which is that Morales gets caught cold, especially early.
Yeah.
And the other thing, I think while Morales has been improving technically, I think it's kind of broken his game. Like, I think it's one of those things where, he had this specific sort of balls out, come out, swarm you with strikes and just swarm you the volume, jump on a lot of like very back take heavy game. And really just determined style of aggressive, depend on your toughness, depend on your ability to just overwhelm people style. And that got caught, it got shut down really quickly in the UFC, and trying to fix that technically has just kind of broken how he fights, especially early when he's trying to
Yeah, I think he's
worried, like, okay, now this time I can't be aggressive. This time I can't go out there. I got to be like more cautious and more measured. And then he starts getting caught, and then he has to like go back to being aggressive and go back to throwing caution to the wind.
I don't think his style is like permanently broken, but I agree that he's definitely is like in a learning process where he's taken a step back in order to go farther forward.
Yeah, and I get the feeling like against somebody that is just going to be able to is just really good at jumping on early opportunities when they get them. Like, I don't trust Morales to, he gave, even somebody like Benito Lopez, who pretty much wants to like stand and kickbox. Like, he gave Benito Lopez a couple of really like clear submission opportunities right out of the gate in that fight.
Yeah.
And
yeah, you're tempting me to pick Manny Bermudez, but I still feel like I know nothing about how Manny Bermudez's game works in action.
No, I don't either. I just know he's got big, long arms, and looks like he kind of has like the natural heavy hands where it's just sort of like long arms with big hands on the end of them.
Yeah.
But he doesn't really seem like he has a clear striking style other than to stick a couple long punches out there. And then it's all people rushing into clinch with him and him catching subs out of that. But I feel like Morales is going to rush into clinch with him and give him a sub opportunity. And
yeah, you might be right.
Bermudez is a reasonable favorite, probably too reasonable given how little clear footage of his complete game there is, but opened at -245, adjusted up to -175. Currently sitting at -176. Morales opened at +175, adjusted down to +146, and has stayed at +146. And that brings us to Eric Shelton versus Alex Perez, flyweight bout. This is actually a tough fight to pick, and it should be a pretty interesting fight depending on who gets advantage, because unfortunately, like, I think Shelton especially can tend to just kind of be happy with a low-paced, careful, pick-my-shots kind of bout. So it may not be a thriller if he gets that fight. But Perez is a pretty relentlessly pushing offense fighter. So my guess is this should be pretty fun. I'm going to pick Perez just off a continued lack of trust as to just how deep Eric Shelton's game is in any one place. Shelton's a deeper striker, faster striker, but his willingness to just kind of sit back and pot shot and pick a low-paced striking game where he just dips in and out and looks for single strike opportunities rather than really putting together a sustained striking offense makes me feel like he's not going to make Perez pay for being a just kind of winging power strikes, come forward striker as much as he should pay for it. And then Perez just looks like a much more technical wrestler and a much more willing, aggressive wrestler. Seeing Shelton get like caught out early against Janelle Lausa and taken down, like he was able to overcome that because he's a better fighter than Janelle Lausa, especially a better wrestler and better grappler than Lausa. But if Perez is just going to stay on him and try and out wrestle him consistently round to round, Shelton's lost to Jared Brooks in a close fight where Brooks was just kind of able to stay on him and stay dedicated to his offense. And Shelton didn't seem to be able to stay focused in that same way. Kind of feel like Perez can replicate that. So I'm picking Perez.
Yeah, what the hell's the point of this matchup?
I don't know.
Like, why do this to either of these two guys? Like, but in particular, Eric Shelton. Like, Eric Shelton, people knew when he was on his 24th season of Tough, is a very talented prospect. And people immediately, like, you look at him, you're like, wow, he's fast as hell.
Yeah.
And seems really well cut out for this division. And then you see him lose two very close split decisions to the top seed of that season of Tough and Jared Brooks, one of the most highly touted prospects flyweight prospects outside the UFC up to that point. And then you see him thoroughly dominate Janelle Lausa. The striking numbers in that fight were like 180 something to 10.
Yeah.
And just battering him on the ground. And so you're like, okay, this is somebody who clearly has a lot of potential and has been matched too hard for his level of experience up to this point. Let's put him against somebody who is just as high, who has potential just as high, but who has twice as much experience. I don't get that. And I have no idea.
I mean, I think part of it is the conundrum of like the women's feather or bantamweight conundrum.
Yeah. There's not enough people in this friggin' division.
There just aren't enough people there. And when there are so few people, you just kind of have to take the fights that are available to you.
Yeah, I guess, but you can't really complain about that when you're the promotion responsible for hiring those people.
No. That's the problem of an underdeveloped division that the UFC is never really seems to be loath to take the pains to develop to the point that they cut half the flyweights that they caught out of that tough season, including ones that have gone on to be really successful outside the promotion for extended periods.
How insane is that? You get like 16 flyweight world champions, and you're like, all right, let's get rid of most of them.
4. We want 4.
That is absurd. But yeah, so I think I have to go with Alex Perez as well, and I hope Shelton can pull this out because I really have my eye on him. I've been super impressed in a lot of ways with his performances, and I think against Lausa, obviously we saw a step down in competition and a much more favorable style matchup than either Brooks or Pantoja. But I do think we also saw a determination to be more aggressive and to force more of a pace on the opponent. That's actually something Shelton talked about after both the Pantoja and Brooks losses. Like, I don't feel like I'm doing what I know I'm capable of doing. For whatever reason, I'm just kind of coasting and I need to make an effort to put more work in. But yeah, I'm not sure if he can do that against a grappler as talented as Perez, against somebody who puts as much pressure on. The thing I'm really concerned about in this case is Perez's front headlock game. I have seen Shelton get caught in so many guillotines, and he has never been finished by one. I mean, he got out of about 19 Tim Elliott guillotines on Tough. He got out of a couple from Jared Brooks. He actually seems really comfortable in that position, but he ends up there a lot because of the way he shoots. He really stuffs his head into that armpit and just drives. And somebody like Perez, who has a very educated front headlock series, not just the guillotine, but loves to play with the 3 or 4 chokes available from that position. I just think it's a little too dangerous. I think Shelton's going to allow Perez to come forward, try to counter him, probably try to hit a takedown when Perez starts kicking his legs, and either end up in a choke or either get submitted or get scared off by the choke and then kind of get kicked to pieces by Perez. It's that kicking game combined with the submission threat that makes me favor Perez.
Yeah.
So that's the pick.
All right. Odds on that fight. Perez is currently the slight favorite, opened at -160, adjusted up and down to -155, and has slide steadily upwards to -138. And Shelton opened at +120, adjusted up and down to +128, and is gone slowly down to +112. So those odds getting closer to even as time comes. I like them at something close to even. I think Perez does deserve to be a slight favorite. He's more experienced. He's got a more process-driven style, as we always harp on about, where it's very clearly the strikes set up the takedowns, which sets up the grappling, and they all flow together. Shelton still seems a little like, oh, I'm striking for this round. Oh, actually, I'm going to try to wrestle for this round. And, like, very... still a heavy disconnect between what he wants to do.
Shelton is talented enough that he sometimes seems bewildered by the fact that he can kind of do anything.
Yeah.
Like he really does have a great feel for the fight all over the place. He scrambles exceptionally. Like he scrambled competitively with Tim Elliott and arguably won that bout. But he has not yet found his process.
Yeah, the lack of focus is why you lose fights like the Tim Elliott bout. You can argue he won it, but it's also you're constantly getting caught in the fight your opponent wants you to be in.
Yeah, exactly.
Bantamweight bout after that, Rani, Yahya, Russell Doane.
this is a contrast of styles. I think you could say that. This is a tough one. Russell Doane looked really, really sharp in that fight with Kwan Ho Kwak.
Yep.
And he has, the thing is I still don't really know what that says about Russell Doane, because he has looked sharp on the feet in the beginning of every single UFC fight. He has never had like not that I can recall, an unimpressive start.
Yeah.
Promotion where he has just been lighting his opponent up, and he got to fight like 3 or 4 minutes with Kwak before he got him out of there. And that's like what might have happened in his previous 4 fights had he landed that one perfect shot. So I still kind of think somebody like Yahya can out-grapple Russell Doane and without too much trouble, because the problem is that Doane he gets really keyed in on his striking and then seems to be surprised when the opponent changes the tune. He can't really turn off that aggressive switch, and it's not like he gets wild and crazy, but he gets tunnel vision. Yeah. He starts striking. He's a very skilled striker, fast and powerful. So he starts landing early, and then he just zeroes in on those targets to the point where it is a completely unexpected when his opponent switches for a takedown and changes things up on him. It might be the only time in Rani Yahya's career that somebody has will hit receive a takedown from him that they did not see coming. Yahya is so relentless with those shots that unless he does what he did against Joe Soto, if he does that, he's dead.
if we see the return of K1 Yahya,
K1 Yahya will get flattened by Russell Doane. I don't really question that. Doane is too dangerous as a striker. But if Yahya fights like Yahya, I think he can hit those takedowns and wear Doane out before submitting him.
I'm trying to remember here. Okay. I was gonna say Louis Smolka and Russell Doane train together, don't they? And they do, because they actually, like, Russell Doane actually fights like a much more athletic version of Louis Smolka. I think that's a lot of the problem. Sure. Where it's like, you get these prolonged Louis Smolka and these prolonged kickboxing bouts where Louis Smolka is just not a very good athlete, so he's constantly losing those prolonged kickboxing bouts. And then Smolka's a pretty good wrestler, but he gets really keyed in on that too, and like really tracked in on different parts of his offense that he just can't seem to let go of. And sometimes that's to his benefit, and sometimes that's to his detriment. And for Doane, Doane is actually a pretty good wrestler too, but he's not necessarily as good a wrestler as some of the fighters he faces. So it's, suddenly really wanting to wrestle Yuri Alcantara or something, and you're just like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
You don't, this is not to your benefit. I am actually going to pick him here, though.
Yeah.
Just barely. And the reason is that I think he's finally learning to balance his offense to some degree. He's starting to find the caution of, how to fight well and pace himself.
Getting out of that tunnel vision a little. And the two things that kind of had me keyed in on that are the Kwan Ho Kwak fight, where he scrambled really well when he got put on his back briefly and did well to fight back to his feet and get back to range and get back to picking his shots. And honestly, the Mirsad Bektic fight, where he looked really hard to take down despite Bektic being way bigger and more powerful. Mm-hmm. And Bektic had to work hard to put him on his back, and he still beat him in the first round and choked him out, but Bektic is much bigger and more powerful. Yeah.
And if he can be hard to take down for just a little while against Rani Yahya, I feel like he can make enough happen standing to win the fight.
Yeah, and Yahya definitely is willing to exhaust himself.
Yeah.
There has been in past fights chasing those takedowns. So if that happens, then yeah, I think basically anytime that Yahya is forced to contend with Doane on the feet, I really think Doane is a very, very sharp striker.
And having seen K1 Yahya, I'm a little concerned that if Doane can stuff a couple takedowns, he could draw out the K1 Yahya.
K1 Yahya was surprisingly good. That's the worrying thing.
Yeah.
K1 Maya, he actually knew what he was doing, And so it almost makes it more tempting to go back to that.
Yeah.
Like, well, I can fight this kind of fight. But it just doesn't suit him. So I don't know.
No.
I hope we don't see much K1 Yahya, but also I kind of hope we do.
Yeah. So I'm going to pick Doane here, take a flyer on him to actually keep everything held together, stuff the shots, and then just be the more powerful fast hand striker. Part of this, too, is that, honestly, if you go back and you look at Yahya's recent success, pretty much nobody he's beaten doesn't want to wrestle with him lately. Like, there are some better athletes in there. Michinori Tanaka and Matthew Lopez are both better athletes than Rani Yahya. But Henry Briones would be the exception, didn't want to wrestle, but is a much worse athlete. Like, Henry Briones is a minus athlete for 135. And then everybody else, Tanaka, Lopez, Kanahara, Bedford, are all exceptionally willing grapplers. You know? And I think if Doane can just not be that guy for this fight, he's got the athleticism. He unlike Briones, is not a minus athlete and can actually work hard enough to stay up. So
I think you make a good case.
I'll take the chance on it. Doane is currently a sizable underdog. Rani Yahya opening at minus 285, dropped down to minus 396, and then bounced back up to minus 255, and has since gone down a little to minus 261. Russell Doane opened at plus 205, went up to plus 311, and dropped back down to plus 212, and is currently at plus 210. I think that's too wide.
Very wide. That is purely based on their records, and while I understand that Yahya has definitely more momentum on his record than Doane, stylistically Doane he's not like out of this matchup. No.
I think it really is based on the idea that Doane is going to grapple with Rani Yahya at some point, or going to give up the takedown easily to Rani Yahya. Because Rani Yahya, it's not so he's got the jiu-jitsu takedown where it's not an athletic shot. It's just, I've clung to you and I'm going to pull my body weight in different directions for long enough that you fall over.
Yeah, it's like, all right, go ahead. It's like a little kid takedown. Like, all right, try to walk away, Mom. I'm wrapped around your knee. And
exactly.
It works though.
It does. All right, light heavyweight bout next. Sam Alvey, Marcin Prachnio. Man, so here's the thing. I'm really not enthusiastic to say that I think Sam Alvey's gonna win this. Like,
meaning what? You're
like,
you're
I'm picking
unenthusiastic.
Sam Alvey, but it is like that makes me really unenthusiastic about this fight.
Yeah.
Because Marcin Prachnio fights exactly like a dude who is used to being the biggest, strongest dude in his circuit. And light heavyweight, it's unfortunate. Like, that's actually a totally functional way to be if you are a welterweight and below. But regionally, outside the UFC, if you are a middleweight and above, being the biggest, strongest dude in your division just really means you're the only potentially UFC caliber fighter on your circuit.
And it's not the kind of experience that prepares you at all for competition in the UFC.
Yeah. Like, Prachnio looks like a legit powerful athlete. He's, he got a ton of muscle. He's big. He's strong. He hits hard. He's got a Kyoshin karate background that he actually looks like he uses.
Those knees, like the one that Curtis Millender landed.
Yeah.
He loves those little step-in high knees.
And the thing is that, and Sam Alvey is a middleweight, so it's not like Sam Alvey's going to be, bigger and stronger than Marcin Prachnio. It's just that Sam Alvey is also ridiculously fucking durable, and pretty much always has been, other than getting overwhelmed by Derek Brunson. That's the only TKO loss on his record. And Prachnio seems like exactly the kind of dude who's just going to go out and throw himself on Sam Alvey until he's really tired and then get knocked out. If he can control the clinch, he can absolutely win this fight because Alvey is just so stationary and like sedentary everywhere. But that's like
describing Alvey's fighting style. Sorry, describing Alvey's fighting style as sedentary is just on the nose.
It is, but that's the thing is like I'm not happy to pick Sam Alvey in this fight. The way Prachnio fights, you know, he had a fight against Leandro Tides, who's like another reasonable another good power striker, and couldn't finish him and ended up with a like exhausted dude split decision where it's just two dudes like huffing and puffing and throwing one strike every minute at each other.
It was kind of a great fight though.
Yeah.
It was kind of a great awful fight.
But like Sam Alvey, I gotta pick him to win that fight. Like I don't see Prachnio fighting safe enough to do what Elias Theodorou did. And maybe he can do what Talis Latis did, which is just like pin him against the cage or Ramzan Emeev and just kind of force him into this ugly, slow fight. But Emeev and Latis are both much more experienced safety first fighters. And Prachnio seems more like the dude who's like, no, I'm just going to go bully you and like put myself in harm's way. And you watch his early fights and like, even that one he had against the other Brazilian dude, the last one he had.
Who's
Galvao.
That? Oh, yeah.
Like his last, Gilberto Galvao, he nearly got like knocked out in the first like minute of that fight. He's just going and like doing some dumb stuff. Got put on his back and it's too wild. So.
Yeah. There's a couple things that make it hard for me to jump on your side. I mean, one of them is Sam Alvey. Yeah.
That's a big one.
Yeah, many subcategories of this one point, which is Sam Alvey. At light heavyweight, was Sam Alvey, did he look at middleweight like somebody who needed to move up?
I think it was just that he took this fight on somewhat short notice, not like very short.
He took it in June. I mean, he had a month and a half.
Yeah, he had a month and a half. I think it was just after that Emeev fight. Like he had such a terrible cut for that fight that
maybe this has been the source of Sam Alvey's difficulties, is that he has secretly been cutting weight and making it very difficult to get down there, and he just doesn't look like it.
Well, I mean,
kind of flabby and kind of thin.
Muscle is easier to cut than fat. So if, you know, with his body type, maybe he's just trying to cut like Pudge.
Yeah, and that's my point, is like he's not that muscular, and he's always been like surprisingly strong in in a stout kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
But he's so sedentary that he never like flings people around in the clinch.
No, God no.
So I don't know if he's got the physical strength to tie up with somebody like Prachnio when Prachnio comes forward. Now, a lot of his chances in this fight are not going to be tying up, but catching Prachnio on the way in.
Yeah.
Because Prachnio pretty much always leads with a right hand and always throws a winging left hook after it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the clinch is all Prachnio's opportunity. It's not necessarily what can Sam Alvey do in the clinch. It's can Marcin Prachnio stay offensive in the clinch? Because I think Prachnio is going to win the first round if he doesn't get knocked out. Like, there's no way he loses early. It's just a question of, does he just gas himself into the point that Sam Alvey can't help but win this fight?
Yeah, but it's also
like the Alex Nicholson fight, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. But the thing is Nicholson in that fight like used a lot of kicks and kept Sam Alvey at range. I don't know. I kind of hate this matchup because it's so this is a future to Prestis fight. I'm calling it right now. It's because Prachnio is like he invites the kind of counters that Sam Alvey likes to throw, but as a light heavyweight with power who puts his punches together, it's not like Sam Alvey is a slickster. He's a counter puncher by nature, but he has very little in the way of effective defense. And it's mostly, if he is going to counter you, it's going to be a same time counter. You throw and I hit you while you're coming in, which that's really risky for both guys. You know, that's not just like Prachnio's playing into Alvey's game. Alvey, if he chooses to stand his ground and trade as Prachnio comes in, he's also playing into Prachnio's game. And I think that might be riskier for Alvey than it is for Prachnio at 205.
Might be. I just have to see it to know, because I know I can trust Alvey's chin, and Prachnio's been knocked out at least. I mean, they've both been knocked out only once, but Prachnio, I don't trust his chin nearly as much. That's really all it is.
Yeah, I mean, part of me would love to pick Sam Alvey here. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. It'll be so funny if Sam Alvey wins this fight that I just have to pick him.
It's just gonna be a terrible fight. I get the feeling. Like, I hope it ends quickly, because if it doesn't end quickly, it's guaranteed to be bad.
Yeah, that's the thing is, it almost seems like it might not be terrible, because these guys do seem like the perfect counterparts to each other. Where Prachnio just likes to continually come in with like short combinations of wild punches, and Alvey loves to let somebody do that so he can punch them back. But somehow it still feels like it's going to suck.
Yeah. It's just because Sam Alvey's so limited.
Yeah.
And unfun.
But yeah, Prachnio might be exactly the right style matchup at 205 to fight Sam Alvey's fight.
Yeah. That's my feeling, is that he's just going to gas, and he's going to give lots and lots of defense of openings, and I trust Alvey to keep his chin together and find shots. Maybe he won't, but I feel terrible picking it.
Yeah.
Prachnio is a pretty sizable favorite. Opened at -280, has been climbing steadily up to -260, so it's getting closer at least. And Alvey opened at +200, adjusted up to +221, and has been falling back down. Is now +209. So,
only at +209.
I mean, I get that Prachnio's on a run and that he looks dangerous. It's just that looking dangerous isn't usually what beats Sam Alvey. It's looking cautious that beats Sam Alvey.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's what Emmett did. That's why you pick Emmett, is that he's a cautious fighter.
Mm-hmm. It's why, why did I not pick Elias Theodorou? I'm pretty sure I picked Sam Alvey in that matchup. That's a gimme.
All right, that brings us to the main card now. Welterweight bout: Ben Saunders, Alan Jouban. It's you.
This is a strange bout, considering both guys' current positions as fighters. Like, where are they at right now? It's not action as if
fighters who look like they can't be action fighters anymore.
Right. Yeah. It's not like either guy really looks like he's lost a step technically or struggles to pull the trigger. It really feels like just an issue of durability. I think that's particularly true for Jouban. Like, I think we've always kind of known with Ben Saunders that he's not a phenomenal athlete. I don't think he's one of
those dudes whose head is way up on a target, and anytime you're that guy, you're gonna get hit hard. And
right. He looks more hittable, so it's less surprising. Like he invites clean shots, and so you have a tall guy who's not particularly fast ends up being in the way of shots on a regular basis. For Jouban, it's like a really pronounced durability issue, where he is a great athlete. He is very quick, and has even been in a few wars and has succeeded well in them. It's not like he freaks out.
No,
and shuts his eyes and
Barry in a consistent,
sure,
slow-paced fight not that long ago, like a year ago.
So it's not like he folds under pressure and that's what causes him to get caught with the shot that puts him out. He just gets clipped and it just cannot withstand it. And so what happens when those two guys fight each other? I mean, in so many ways, these guys are the same fighter.
Yeah.
Like they're both 10th Planet guys too, right? Like both 10th Planet guard players with Muay Thai kickboxing games. Really, I guess what it comes down to is who's going to get that big shot first. And I think if that's the question, I have to go with Jouban because he's got that athleticism that Saunders has never had, because he's quick, because he can explode in with a straight shot or with a big kick. I just think if it's a contest of who cracks the other guy's chin first, I'm going to go with the speedier athlete.
Yeah, that's pretty much my feeling. The other part of this is that Jouban can pressure. He can go forward and be an effective fighter going forward. He actually, I mean, both guys tend to be at their worst going backwards. Jouban especially is just terrible at moving away. Like, that's how he always gets caught, is that he's going back in a straight line and his defense is lax and he just is just really bad at handling pressure. Saunders, it's, you know, being a tall dude moving backwards in a straight line with your head up in the air, like, that's just always going to be bad. The difference is that Saunders can't really pressure. He doesn't like to do it. He can throw, and that, I think it's partially an athleticism thing, not fast enough to close the distance. He's also really lengthy and rangy, so he wants to be outside. And, you know, he might step in with one big kick or with one long punch, but then it's all like leaping into the clinch to get to the clinch fast because you can't be in the intermediary pressure range. Whereas Jouban is a much more comfortable fighter, just working, moving forward. The other question there, though, is what if this becomes a clinch fight? Because Jouban is a comfortable clinch fighter, but Saunders is a much less predictable clinch fighter.
Yeah, and that's where his height really helps him.
Yeah, and he's good at, like, finding angles for knees and for elbows that are really unexpected. And if this becomes a clinch battle, then his durability and lack of athleticism may be a much lesser factor than Jouban's. So I'm picking Jouban to get the early, to just like do the work early, move forward early, land faster, be first. But if he walks right into Ben Saunders' clinch, then he could easily get put out.
Yeah, and Saunders' reach might surprise him as well. I think that's a big part of what allowed Nico Price to catch him so quickly. Whereas
Price pressures. Like, that was the difference there, is that Price is willing to just jump forward, go chase Jouban down, and keep on him and keep chasing him down in a way that Ben Saunders...
Sure. But you know, Perry did that in stretches as well, and did spend most of the fight coming after Jouban, and it was only in brief moments where Perry was able to close the distance enough to get to him. And I do think Saunders' reach, but he would have to be more effective coming forward. And I guess I shouldn't feel so sad about the fact that, like, both these guys, like, you know, Ben Saunders had a really long career and he's 34. Yeah. Alan Jouban's 36.
Yeah. Jouban started really late. And even he, you know, and that's just, you know, it's catching up with him.
Yeah, it feels sad because, like, under different circumstances, it feels like it really feels like Jouban in particular could have become a really great fighter.
Yeah.
But, you know, 36, what can you do?
I'm still picking Jouban, but with, you know, with caveats. It'll be an interesting, violent fight, no question. Like, there's no way that won't end violently.
Yeah.
Jouban is the favorite, opened at -215. Adjusted up and down a little to -245, currently out at -264. Saunders opened at +165, adjusted up and down to +190, climbing up to +213. So those odds getting a little wider. Under 2.5 rounds, -175. So that brings us to a women's strawweight bout. Angela Hill, Marina Moroz. And this is a fight that I want to look forward to because I like Angela Hill. She seems like a nice person. She's fun online. She's a very online person, which fuck if I can't respect that.
She's extremely online. And I think it's fair to say that her fights are generally very fun.
Yeah, her fights are fun, but I really like that Ansaroff fight really was like my gut check of like, okay, I actually like I've known the story on Angela Hill for a while. I have to start trusting that story, which is that she has this technical idea of how she wants to fight, and it doesn't have a lot of power on it, and it's not sustainable because it's so footwork and movement heavy that it exhausts her. And when she gets flat-footed, she hits a little harder, but she also gets way more predictable and just gets eaten up and picked off. Question is Marina Moroz actually a good fighter at all?
Yeah.
Like, just at all. Because if you go back and look at her record, she had that, like, shocking upset of Joanne Calderwood where she submitted her off her back with an arm bar early in the fight. And as we've come to realize over time, Joanne Calderwood is not a good athlete at all and makes some poor decisions, especially with grappling and wrestling. And then she beat Christina Stanciu, who's one of the worst fighters the UFC's picked up in recent memories.
Has Stanciu fought at all since then?
Did they I don't know. And she got cut not long after, so she may have fought back on the regionals, but I haven't been following her career. I haven't been like, oh, what's that one Romanian bantamweight woman the UFC signed doing these days? And then she took a split decision over Danielle Taylor in what was literally one of the most god-awful fights imaginable. Where they just stood at range and shadow boxed for 3 rounds, and they gave the fight to Moroz because she shadow boxed harder. Other than that, she's been pretty much clearly beaten by Carla Esparza and Valerie Letourneau in her only 2 other fights. And that kind of makes me want to pick Angela Hill here because, frankly, she's busier. And Moroz doesn't seem like she has the diversity of tools that's going to challenge Hill in the ways that somebody like Ansaroff was able to. Like, Ansaroff cut into Hill's legs with low kicks to really stop a lot of that movement, and Moroz doesn't kick a lot. And then, you know, Ansaroff had the power and the willingness to trade consistently that once Hill slowed down, she was there to find her with a lot of shots, and Hill still landed a lot late in that fight. She still slipped. She dodged some punches. She still landed some good power shots as the fight went on. And Moroz is really only looking to pump out range-finding shots that are out of range, and then she wants to counter when people commit. And her countering is not – she's not like a happy counter fighter. She just throws like a flurry really quick and then gets out. It's not a, oh, like, let me pick you off with just the right hook. It's just, okay, here's 3 punches, get away. Let's go back to me pumping out range-finding jabs. And I feel like Hill can just stay busier all fight in either situation. Even once she slows down and sits down on stuff more, gets a little more predictable. I'm going to pick Hill to be just a little busier every round and landing a little harder or a little cleaner and being, you know, picking the ranges that she will land strikes, unlike Moroz. And there's also the chance that, you know, if Hill presses the fight into the clinch, Moroz will just jump guard and give top control, and for the off chance that she'll land an armbar, and her grappling is not really good enough to bet on that. So I'll take Hill in a fight that I'd it's like I say, it's one of those everybody has. Both fighters have these big obvious flaws that I don't see getting fixed anytime soon, and I'm not like a win for either of them doesn't tell me a lot.
Yeah, Marina Moroz it's still only 26. So there's, and we know that she made a camp change, and it resulted in a style change after, I think, the Letourneau fight, where, you know, she wanted to, I don't know, become more well-rounded or adopt a style that she felt would work better for her, whatever the cause may be. I don't think it's probably not wise to give up on that just yet, as we just talked about earlier with Jesus. Who else did we say was taking a step back in order to Morales?
Morales, yeah.
As in the case of Albert Morales, that may very well be happening, where Moroz will turn the corner at some point. All the pieces will finally lock in together, and her new style will work.
Yeah.
But it's been 3 fights, and it still feels like she's kind of sabotaging herself by giving up on a lot of what worked really well for her in her first couple of UFC fights. Like, even if you take away that surprising win over Calderwood, the Letourneau fight is then her best performance. It was the loss after she beat Calderwood, in which she had some really good moments and just sort of got out-hustled by a more experienced, bigger fighter. And so since then, like, that was, Moroz was like stepping in, throwing power combinations.
Yeah.
And now she's this really reticent, long-range fighter who seems to have lost her sense of distance, doesn't seem confident anymore in stepping in. Something tells me that means she's being trained in a way that is maybe counter to her instincts.
Yeah.
That she's not comfortable still doing what she has tried to do for the last 3 fights.
Which, frankly, it also seems like the same thing Angela Hill's going through in a totally different way.
Yeah, absolutely. Except that Angela Hill's stylistic changes have not made her ineffective.
No.
They have not prevented her from scoring with shots. I mean, for a little while in Invictus, she had some really close fights where she was kind of doing a lot of moving around and a lot of throwing without finding the range. But I think we're past that point. Now she's still running up against stylistic issues, but she knows her range.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I guess the narrative here, like, I definitely expect Angela Hill to win. Because I have yet to see Marina Moroz find a way to make this new style work. I am, however, curious to see how Angela Hill looks. Some of our thirstier viewers may know that Angela Hill has packed on some muscle and been posting lots of pictures of her beefing up online. And I'm kind of curious to know if that also brings with a style change for Angela Hill.
Yeah.
Is she thinking like, hey, I got to be stronger. I got to hit harder. I'm going to have to settle down a bit and try to throw shots at people. I know she's been working on her boxing.
It would be nice if she could go back to what she started as.
Yeah.
And do it with a more technical stand-up game this time. Because she did start out as this sit-down power puncher who would just walk in on people and throw big shots, but it was only like one at a time, and they were only a few strikes. She didn't have a very deep technical game. And then she became this like high-volume outfighter who had a more technical game, but took all the steam off her punches and couldn't sustain it.
Yeah. I mean, I still think maybe we have the makings there of like a good boxer puncher who is like, all right, I need to bring back some of my old aggression, but I have picked up some useful evasive skills in learning the second style, but I still haven't really seen the two of them married in a way that feels comfortable.
Yeah.
So I'll be looking to see how that changes with the new muscle and everything. Angela Hill, I think, is a fairly easy pick here, although, you know.
Although if Hill keeps walking in and Moroz can counter effectively each time, then there's a chance that Moroz just lands the better shots. But
yeah, unlike Danielle Taylor, Angela Hill will actually move forward enough to get to the target. So she may actually run into a few of the counters, whether Moroz has her distance or not.
Yeah. Moroz, unfortunately for Moroz, she tends to back herself out of range as she's throwing the counters. So like the first one will land, and then the next two she'll already be like stepping way out of the pocket.
Did like Holly Holm have her first UFC fight when Moroz decided to change camp? Did she get inspired and say like,
maybe?
I have no idea.
All right. Hill is the favorite, opened at plus 100, adjusted down to minus 150. Went up a little as high as minus 131, but has drifted back down to minus 156. Moroz opened at plus 140, adjusted up to plus 117, and has slowly climbed up to plus 129. Actually, no, Moroz opened at minus 140. Weird. and has climbed steadily up to plus 129.
That is very weird.
All right. Next up is Sara McMann, Marion Reneau, and that's you.
Sara McMann. Man, Sara McMann is a strong lesson in not counting fighters out before it's actually time to count them out, and then learning to count them out again. Poor Sara McMann. I remember she beat like Alexis Davis, and she was like, "Hey, give me a title shot." Yeah. And the UFC, like the fans were all quiet when she said it, and the UFC was like, "I don't think we're gonna." And now it's like she's finally putting some momentum together, and then she just eats another loss. And
it's a loss again that you're just watching it and you're like, what the fuck happened? Yeah. It's not like, oh, you met a better striker who could tune you up and just started putting it on you, or, oh, you met a better grappler who just like, got you into the back, was able to get the right position and out grapple you or surprise you with a sub off their back or whatever. No, it was like, oh, you were going for a takedown and you just kind of got turned and taken down and then just kind of gave up.
Yeah, that's the real issue with Sara McMann is not that like she needs to, she has things to learn yet. It's that in so many ways, she seems to just fall into novice mistakes. It seems like even when it seems like she's learning, you put her in the right situation and she unlearns everything in an instant. And I don't know what the explanation for that is. I mean, she's 37. Maybe she's just having trouble picking up new skills. I have no idea.
Yeah, partially it also kind of just seems like she's maybe never been that dedicated to being an MMA fighter.
Maybe that she just kind of is like a phenomenal athlete and a really good wrestler and just decided she could do it without having to try that hard.
Yeah, or just like, has never really committed fully to the idea of like, oh, I'm gonna, like I guess she's a team alpha male now. I'm seeing, is that something? Let me see. Sure Dog's usually, or actually, I'll just check her Instagram while you're talking.
We'll see if that's current. But that kind of issue makes a fight.
Yeah, she was training out in the middle of nowhere for a long time.
Yeah. Wikipedia says Sacramento, so we'll find out. We'll have Zane checking Instagram or something like that. See if we can get any cuddly pictures with Uriah.
There's a glamour shot of Sage Northcutt on her one of the top.
Okay, that's
shots on her Instagram.
Inconclusive. A lot of women have glamour shots of Sage Northcutt on their Instagrams,
and a Team Ishihara pic too. So okay. I think that suggests she's currently out at Team Alpha Male these days.
Okay, all right, okay. Although also inconclusive, a lot of women have Ishihara on there.
Yeah, but even still, I think we can trust the update.
I think that's enough evidence. So I don't know. Maybe, I mean, people who go to Alpha Male usually seem to hit a point where they're taking shit really seriously. It doesn't seem like you can get away with not taking your fighting career seriously there. Yeah. And maybe it's good for McMann to be back in a wrestling room kind of environment. But that inconsistency, those weird novice-like mistakes makes matchup like this like way harder to call than it feels like they should be. Because if Sara McMann was as good a grappler as her level of wrestling skill required her to be, like if she was like most successful MMA wrestlers and not, somebody with the level of grappling skill you can get away with at women's bantamweight, I would pick her over Marion Reneau because I would say she's going to take Marion Reneau down. She's going to defend submissions because, of course, Zane, it's easier to defend submissions than it is to hit them. Yep. Everybody knows that. And that she will ride her out and beat her out from top position. But Sara McMann somehow just doesn't know how to defend submissions sometimes. She just kind of stops fighting or just falls into bad positions. And then she's really inactive sometimes. And other times she's very active. And sometimes she doesn't even go for takedowns. Like, I just have no idea how Sara McMann is going to approach any given fight.
And on the other hand, you have Marion Reneau, who likes the idea of fighting a lot more than she actually likes fighting.
Right. So Marion Reneau, who has to be woken up sometimes to convince her to fight.
Woken up. You can see her talking herself into fighting harder. Sure.
Yeah.
Constantly. It is a constant battle of, no, I should actually throw a punch now. Come on, throw the punch. Come on, let's step in and throw the punch. No, let's throw a punch. We're going to really throw a punch this time. Yeah. And it's just like a constant every minute of a fight battle.
Yeah. Yeah. And when it comes out her way, it's like, or when she has a really big moment, it's against like a Betch Correia who's not athletic enough to hang with her, but pushes the fight enough that she has no choice but to fight back. But then when she's just like teeing off on someone like Talita Bernardo, she's still really inactive at times. She still is not pushing as much of a pace she should, even though she has every advantage. I don't know. This is a terrible matchup to make predictions on, and it doesn't even mean it's
terrible
going
matchup to predict.
Yeah, it is a terrible matchup to predict. Oh God, I'm gonna take Sara McMann. I'm going to gamble on the chance that if she's training at Team Alpha Male, she's going to come in shape. And her shape, shape is never really a question. She's just in incredibly good shape. But that she is going to come in like mentally in shape. She's going to come in having put herself through the paces, sparring and rolling hard with other strong athletes in the lead up to this fight. And if she does that, I think we can see the best of what Sara McMann has to offer. And if we see that, it's a style matchup that does favor her because Reneau is so susceptible to the takedown and more than that, so willing to stay on her back and grapple. But I would not be at all shocked if at any moment and in any phase, Marion Reneau found a way to win this fight. Sara McMann gives her a triangle. That could absolutely happen. Yep. Sara McMann doesn't do anything and Reneau just sort of calmly kicks her to pieces from range. That could absolutely happen too. So it sucks. Yeah. I'm going to pick McMann.
I'm going to pick McMann too, just for the fact that I don't actually trust Reneau to do anything to take advantage of Sara McMann making a mistake.
Should have stopped there. I don't actually trust Marion Reneau to do anything.
Yeah, that's really what it is. Like, I don't trust her to throw enough strikes to hurt McMann or to finish her in any one moment.
Yep.
And I don't trust, like, if McMann wants to take her down, Reneau will just pull guard. So there's that. But, like Talita Bernardo had a whole round of success on top of Marion Reneau.
Yeah.
Just before she got exhausted. And that doesn't give me any great feeling of like, oh, well, Reneau off her back. The moment she hits her back, she's going to be like, on it, and I can trust her to get the submission that's going to win this fight for her. And then she doesn't wrestle offensively, so you can't say like, oh, but she could take McMann down the way Ketlen Vieira did, and then McMann is just clueless off her back. So I just don't trust Marion Reneau to fight in enough ways that win fights. McMann is a bomb constantly waiting to self-destruct, but I don't, like a sea mine that's just waiting for a chance to blow itself up, but Marion Reneau is up there in like a skiff, and it's just like you're never gonna hit the mine.
Yeah, it's the thing is like when you're making your pick on the basis that you don't trust one of the fighters to do what they're supposed to do, to make the obvious choices to win, it really does. It still makes it difficult when you feel the exact same way about the other fighter.
Yeah.
But
odds on the bout. Marion Reneau, it opened at plus 165, adjusted up to plus 174, and then jumped up in the past couple days to plus 185. So after being pretty much stable, she's gone up 10 points. Not a huge jump, but compared to a flat line suddenly.
Mm-hmm.
And Sara McMann opened at minus 200, was at minus 214 and drifting down in the past couple days, dropped down to minus 230. So I'm surprised that odds are anywhere near that far apart. There's no reason that Sara McMann should be any kind of favorite more than like minus 150 over anybody.
That's the problem. There's many reasons Sara McMann should be the favorite. It's just that she's Sara McMann all the time.
Yeah.
So don't treat it the way you normally would this stylistic matchup.
All right. That brings us to a bantamweight bout. Renan Barao, Brian Kelleher. And, man, here's the thing. There's a really, really good chance that Renan Barao wins this fight in the opening round. Kelleher, his defense is super inconsistent. He's got the kind of defense where it looks like he has to like remember. He's like, oh no, I should slip punches, and then he'll like move his head and like get out of the way of stuff and stuff like that. But for long stretches, he'll just run in looking to throw big power shots with his head on line, there to get countered. Renan Barao is a much more technical striker than Brian Kelleher. There's just no two ways about that. And then Kelleher is very easy to catch in submissions. Always has been. He gets over aggressive with his wrestling and grappling game, puts things out, puts limbs out there, puts himself in danger to be submitted. Renan Barao is a very good submission grappler, very difficult to out wrestle, very capable, especially with his arm triangle chokes. If Kelleher makes a big mistake early, like he did against Marlon Vera, there's no reason that Barao could not win this fight. Thing is, this is something I've been harping on about with Barao for a while now, is that I think Barao is no longer confident in the way he fights. And it's, you know, we could say, oh, he gasses or whatever, but I really don't think it's a cardio problem. I think it's a problem of, or I don't think he's got a bad chin anymore. I mean, it took like 100 shots for TJ Dillashaw to put him away each time. It's just the thing where he knows he can be knocked out now. He knows he can be stopped. And so when he gets hurt, he starts to panic. And when he starts to panic, he adrenaline dumps, and then he gets tired, and then all the fight just goes away. Everything starts to work against him. When you look at the Aljamain Sterling fight, he easily won round 1 off Aljamain Sterling. Got him on his back for a second, kept him there the whole rest of the round, did damage, outstruck him when they were standing. It was, you know, a classic-looking Renan Barao. He looked just as good as he always has. And then in round 2, Sterling stuffed a shot, kind of tagged him a couple times, clipped him once, and once he got clipped, you could just start to see suddenly everything was a problem. Sterling shoots in, Barao suddenly starts, you know, is getting taken down, he starts getting roughed up, and, you know, that is just a problem that Brian Kelleher doesn't have. So, I'm picking Brian Kelleher. There's a chance Renan Barao gets it done early, but it's a get it done early or lose the war kind of fight. So I'm picking Kelleher to stay on him and just kind of land the better shots, get takedowns. Maybe. Barao's still really tough to take down. But just kind of keep the aggression high throughout the fight, and for Barao to just kind of fade out of it.
Yeah, I like that take on Renan Barao. It really does look like somebody who just sort of spirals once they hit a certain point, and you have to imagine that goes back to what happened to him in the Dillashaw fights. Yeah. And the curious thing is that if you go back to his fight with Jeremy Stephens, he defied the spiral in that bout. You know, he had a very strong case for winning that fight. It was extremely close down the stretch, and that's because he, like, after getting tagged, he spiraled, and then getting hurt reminded him not to. Yeah. You know, where he was fighting really smart, and then he started to get kind of tired and got sloppy and got hit, and then he had to fight smart again to win the rest of the fight. And then against Aljamain Sterling, it's like the spiral is just out of control. It's like the moment he runs into some kind of adversity or whatever, the moment he's forced to make a reaction where he's like panicking in a way, he's kind of reacting on adrenaline, he just starts to fold. And I don't know, like it does feel like a mental issue more than anything else. It doesn't even look like Barao has slowed down that much. Like you said, I don't think he's got a durability problem at all. No. Dillashaw had to land a ton of shots to put Barao away. He took very clean punches from Jeremy Stephens and recovered to have a strong third round. Like, I don't think he's chinny. I don't think he's getting worse technically. In fact, in many ways, I think he's improving. I just think that mentally he seems to now have this permanent block in his head where he reaches a certain point in the fight, something happens he doesn't like, and then it's just like flashbacks to the. It's like every time that, like what I say about Talis Lightus, every time that somebody starts to outbox him, it's Anderson Silva flashback.
Yeah.
He just has a horrible Vietnam flashback of what happened to him in the Silva fight, and falls apart mentally. And yeah, Brian Kelleher puts enough pressure on and fights well enough everywhere, has enough power, has enough takedown ability, attacks submissions and transitions aggressively enough that he will very likely cause something like that to happen to Barao down the stretch. But he is also so susceptible early on to a lot of the kinds of things that Barao likes to do, to the flying knees coming in, to the submissions like from the front headlock. Kelleher just seems to completely lose sight of his defensive responsibility. He's like a more fluid looking Dennis Bermudez, where you can be tricked into thinking he doesn't have that problem because he looks slippery and slick, and there's a nice rhythm to how he moves. It's not mechanical. But then you actually look at it in practice. How does he respond when he's attacking? How does his defense work? And it doesn't.
Yeah.
If he's attacking, it's just not there. So I'm going to go with Barao. I think Kelleher's
a very fair pick.
I think Kelleher's vulnerable enough in that early going that Barao can catch him. But everything else still stands. Down the stretch, it's going to be very, very difficult, I think, at stretches for Barao to keep a lead.
Yeah, because I think part of what really worked for the Stevens and Nover fights is that neither Stevens nor Nover like to really fight a high output pace.
Yeah.
And so they were willing to give him breaks to recuperate and to like get his head back together.
Good point.
And Aljamain Sterling and Kelleher too aren't that. Like they'll just stay on him. So
Kelleher is a pace fighter for sure.
Yep. So if Kelleher survives early, I think he'll take over late, but he is going to put himself in a lot of danger.
Yeah.
So
and like I said, like technically, I still think Barao is there.
Like he's still, like I said, he handily beat Aljamain Sterling in round 1 of that fight. It was not a close round. So
yeah.
All right, that brings us to a welterweight bout: Mike Perry, Max Griffin, and yeah, this is you. So take it away.
I think Mike Perry should be favored to win this matchup. I favor him to win this matchup. I think he is just a much better natural fighter than Max Griffin. Mike Perry responds to things that a fighter at his level of experience, in a way that a fighter at his level of experience should not. Yeah. Where he understands his distance just sort of innately. He knows when something is in range, and he does not hesitate to pull the trigger. He does not hesitate to put his shots together, and he is not afraid of taking the fight anywhere. He is an absolutely fearless fighter. I still don't like this matchup because I've complained about it several times. This is Mike Perry's tune-up. You know, like Mike Perry lost to Santiago Ponzinibbio, yet another war in which he took a lot of clean shots, way more than a fighter at 26 with tons of athletic talent and very little experience should be taking. And his tune-up is a very athletic, very powerful brawler who, if Mike Perry cannot put Max Griffin away, it's going to be a war. I'm very confident in that. So I don't like this. I don't think they're taking care of Mike Perry. I don't think the UFC ever takes care of their fighters, but they're certainly not taking care of a really special prospect in Mike Perry the way they should. But it is still Mike Perry's fight to lose. It's just that he'll probably take more damage in the process than he needs to.
The big question for me going into this is that Max Griffin is now, for the first time in his career, a full-time fighter, which we have seen lately. A lot of fighters making big improvements in their game the moment they can quit their job and train full-time. That could be a big jump for him. And because Max Griffin, his game has always been marked by massive technical gaps.
Yeah.
Where it's like, yeah, you're a good athlete, you hit hard, you're a busy fighter, but you know, you watch his striking and it's leap in with the jab cross, leap in with the jab cross, leap in with a cross, leap in with a jab cross. I'm going to go back and leap in with this jab cross now. I got to reset and leap in with the jab cross again. And that is just how he fights.
Yeah.
And He's not a great. He's a good scrambler as a wrestler, but he's not otherwise a good offensive or defensive wrestler.
Yeah.
And so for Perry, like if this is a stand-up war with a guy who's just going to be leaping in to look for how to land a right hand over and over and over again, Perry is patient enough. He's a much better, more cautious pressure fighter. He will actually walk people down with small steps and look for ways to pressure them, whereas Griffin just bursts running at you. And that should set up perfectly for Perry to land the shots that he wants to land, the bigger power shots that will hurt Griffin and put him away. But as you say, I mean, the way Perry fights, like he doesn't have that deep a toolkit to throw. He's got like 4 or 5 strikes that he really throws well. And if Griffin sees those coming and figures those out and makes this a pace war, Perry slows down. He gets more predictable, less defensively sound, and has more trouble finding his shots as fights go on. So this could get real ugly and into a real brawl if it gets going past round 1. But got to pick Perry for being the more technical, smarter fighter early, especially.
Yeah, although I do wonder, like, what direction is Perry's technique going to go as well? Like,
yeah, who is he working with that will improve him technically, or is he just going to get tracked into these few things that, like, and he'll start learning some other weird tools, and his game will just end up in this sort of OSP like, yeah, you know these 5 tools that you've known forever, and you're just always this same janky fighter.
Perry, like OSP, seems like a fighter who could really benefit from like a strong relationship with a really dedicated coach.
Yeah.
And I don't know that he has that.
Yeah. Speaking of which, light heavyweight. Odds first. Odds. Mike Perry. He is a large favorite over Max Griffin. Opened at -230, adjusted down to -250, and it's fallen ever since, down to -347. Griffin opened at +170, adjusted up to +214, has slid up steadily to +275. I think a little of that is just the love of Mike Perry's personality that people have. He's a fun dude. He's a weird clown, and that gets a lot of, people like that, but he's not he's way better than the worst fighters in his division, but he's not way better than everybody else in his division.
Right. Yeah. It's he's in this difficult middle spot where he'll blow somebody like Alex Reyes out of the water.
Yeah.
And just utterly obliterate him, but
carrying against Alan Jouban, and he just loses.
Right. Alan Jouban, who in many ways seems like somebody Mike Perry absolutely should be able to beat just by catching him at some point.
Yeah.
And he still fell flat.
All right. That brings us to a light heavyweight bout, OSP versus Ilir Latifi. And, I mean, the book has been written on both these fighters. Once again, OSP is just this, throws the power left hand, the body kick really hard, swats it like, I realize this too watching this. It's like there's a continuum somewhere of OSP and James Vick and Yancy Medeiros. And Vick is like the high end of all of it, except OSP is the high end athletically. Like technically it's all James Vick. Athletically, it's all OSP, and then Yancy Medeiros is just like the chaff.
Poor Yancy.
And there are all these dudes who fight off the back foot, waiting for chances to burst through space with big single power shots that will just kind of open up the fight, cause enough damage to be able to open up more offense.
Mm-hmm.
And that's who OSP is. I mean, he can wrestle a little if he has to, but he would rather not. He will, if you try to wrestle and grapple him and you give him a chance for a Von Flue choke, man, he will be on that like nobody's business.
Not even just that, he chases the Von Flue choke. He literally he baits the guillotine so he can hit it, which is both brilliant and hilariously dumb that OSP is so fixated on his special move being that submission that usually only works on white belts.
Yep.
That he will put arms over his head so he can hit it.
Yep.
Oh, light heavyweight.
And so that could be a problem against Ilir Latifi, who has some squeeze. He's, you know, strong as hell. But Ilir Latifi's got pretty short arms and is pretty short and is probably more likely to just not, like, I can't imagine Ilir Latifi successful guard grappler, really.
No. I don't think he could get his legs around a lot of light heavyweights.
Yeah. And otherwise, honestly, I think Ilir Latifi is just too predictable to beat Ovince St. Preux. Like Latifi can land these bombing single big right hands and can hit big takedowns, but he's not a great top control fighter. He doesn't fight well on top of people. He just tends to move immediately to try to get a north-south choke and give it up. Like, oh, I'll just like rotate to get like a head and arm north-south choke or something like that, and in doing so, let you stand up. Or he doesn't throw a lot of strikes from top control. And then from the outside, he doesn't work at that great a pace. Like he's knocked out some people, but OSP is ridiculously hard to knock out.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's sort of the secret in OSP's arsenal is that if you're not Jimmy Manawa or Virgil Zwicker for God knows what reason, you're not going to knock out Ovince St. Preux. And if he's not going to knock him out, OSP is much more likely to find Latifi out at range with some janky long left hand that looks like he like charged it. Like he'll put it back here and there's like a glow coming off of it. And then he's going to step forward and you see like, it feels like the punch stops, but then the elbow keeps going and it somehow like goes out another foot and hits the person. That's very much the OSB technical punching style.
For sure. Yeah. It is like he loads his left hand into a catapult behind his back.
Yeah.
And that with no control from his actual body. It's just flung at the target and he has to follow it.
But that seems more likely to hurt Latifi than Latifi staying on the outside and looking for chances to leap in behind a right hand to a double leg. It's going to be the secret to beating OSP. So I'm taking Ovince St. Preux.
Yeah. Yeah. It will be a lot easier, much like the McMann fight. Like it would be easier here if OSP just didn't occasionally just look like absolute shit. Like every once in a while he just is just flat where it's like he didn't really take it seriously or he maybe had an off night. Maybe there's, I mean, who knows? I don't want to be too glib about, because there's a lot of things that can affect your fighting performance and who knows what goes on in OSP's personal life that affects how he looks in the cage on any given night. But he's not like reliable enough to easily take him over someone like Ilir Latifi, even though he does have a lot of innate advantages. He does have the build to just pick somebody like Latifi apart from long range. He does have the speed to compete with someone in Latifi who often surprises people with his hand speed. And he's at least an explosive enough scrambler to keep somebody like Latifi, who's not a great top control player, from holding him down if he does get some takedowns. But sometimes like he gets tired after a round.
Yep.
And like it would be really weird if Ilir Latifi outlasted him, but Latifi does do a pretty good job of just sort of marshaling his energy and a lot of times he wins, like when he beat John Vellante, by just not really doing much and letting the other person do too much without being effective. And I can see OSP being pulled into that kind of trap. But I'm going to pick OSP because I like the kicking game, I like the reach advantage, and I like the greater willingness to throw volume, which Latifi literally can't throw volume because he doesn't throw combinations, and he almost throws nothing except that right hand. So,
and OSP is also likely more durable. He's only been stopped once or twice, and Latifi a few more times. And when Latifi has been stopped, it seems much more of like an out cold. Like I guess the Manua knockout for OSP was pretty brutal, but
yeah, I don't know. I think Latifi's pretty durable. Like
I think Latifi is hyper defensive.
That's okay. Yeah.
He's not very. I don't think he's all that durable, but he stays way outside and just only picks like specific moments to jump in with what is both a punch and a shot at the same time, so that you can't bet on countering it.
Yeah. He just doesn't give you the opportunities to hit those shots. But also, like I don't have enough evidence to say that he's not durable. Like,
yeah, okay.
Eating that knee from Ryan Bader would have killed most humans.
I trust Latifi to take. I trust OSP to take Latifi's shots much better than I trust Latifi to take OSP's.
Yeah.
Ilir Latifi is a very minor underdog. Opened at -110, adjusted up to +102, has moved up and down pretty consistently since then, and is currently at +101, but was as low as -102 like yesterday. And OSP opened at -120, dropped down to -133, moved back up to -120, dropped back down to -126, and that's where he is at the moment. So he's stayed the favorite all the way through, but it's very narrow.
Yeah.
I honestly just feel a little bit like I need to see more proof that Latifi can win a fight like OSP before I think that's a little close for a guy whose best win is Tyson Pedro.
Or John Vellante. Yeah. Light heavyweight is such trash.
All right. Women's strawweight bout next. Fight of the card. No question.
Jessica Andrade.
And Tecia Torres. This is you.
Well, Jessica Andrade. That's the pick. I like this matchup. I like Tecia Torres getting a chance to break into contention. I think she deserves it, but I think it's arguably one of the worst style matchups for her to do that, because like one of the big things holding Tecia Torres back is that she's small and gets kind of out-muscled by people, and like that's what Jessica Andrade does to women at strawweight, is she exhausts them and then out-muscles them. And I will say, like, one thing going for Tecia Torres over somebody like Claudia Gadelha is that I don't see Tecia getting exhausted. Yeah. I don't see her getting worn out the way Claudia did. And she's certainly sharp enough with her hands to have some of the success that Claudia had early against Andrade. But strictly because of the physical advantages of Andrade and the way that her style plays into those advantages, how aggressive she is, how willing she is to turn one small opportunity into a series of opportunities that flow out of that. That if Jessica Andrade lands one shot, not only is she going to land the same shot next time because now she knows it's there, she is going to take that success and land 6 other shots behind it or immediately tie up in a takedown. I just think that Jessica Andrade is too much of a snowball going downhill for little Tecia Torres to not get rolled over.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing comes down to a lack of power for Tecia Torres, I think. And it's a lack of power coupled with incredibly short arms.
Yeah.
Which is actually kind of a weird combination. But like, because she's so unwilling to sit down on punches, and is, so focused on like drop into the pocket, throw 2 or 3 strikes as fast as I can, and get out as fast as I can, staying light on my feet the whole time, that she doesn't hit that hard. But she also has to, the only way she can land shots is to drop into the pocket and be right in front of people.
Yeah.
Like, she got her back taken immediately by Michelle Waterson, who is who's weaker and not slower, but weaker and less athletic than Tecia Torres, or at least weaker. Athleticism has a lot of different qualities to it, but she got her back taken immediately by a much less technical, weaker Michelle Waterson, just because she has to drop into the pocket to throw. And when she does that, she can be tied up. And she could outmuscle Michelle Waterson, because Michelle Waterson can be outmuscled by most legit most legit straw weights. But if she's going to drop into the pocket against Jessica Andrade and bet on having a safety valve to like get out immediately, or get tied up and like have to outmuscle Andrade in tie-ups, I don't see that happening.
Yeah, having to step into close range to do work is just a recipe for disaster against Jessica Andrade.
Yep. The big thing for Torres is, like we saw with Kelleher, Torres will be faster than Andrade, especially with her pants, partially because Andrade winds up so much that she's going to be slower. Like, if you're throwing a hook from your waist, it's just going to be slower than a straight 1-2. But if you're not hitting her hard enough to earn any respect, then Andrade is just going to keep pressure on you until you slow down to the point that it doesn't, like, your ability to be faster is no longer relevant.
Yeah, I would say like an obvious parallel for this matchup, since I so frequently compare Andrade to John Lineker, is Lineker Dodson.
Yeah.
And if we compare these two to their counterparts there, Tecia Torres definitely falls short of the John Dodson mark in more ways than Jessica Andrade does of the John Lineker mark.
Yeah. The other part of this too is, of course, a big effective part that we've seen lately. I think something that has really only been exposed in the Kelleher fight, frankly, is just how fucking brutal Jessica Andrade has learned to be from top control. If she gets you down for even a half a second. Like, that was really the turning point in that fight, was she got Kelleher down for like once and beat her so badly that Kelleher was just exhausted for the rest of the fight.
Yeah, she was brutal on top of Joanne Calderwood when she got her down as well.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean as much.
True, that's true.
And so, yeah, Tecia Torres is really hard to take down and a good scrambler, but she just can't match her for power, and Andrade has the gas tank to make that, and the gas tank and the willingness to throw volume to make that really pay off for her.
Yeah, I agree.
Odds on the fight, Andrade is a sizable favorite, opened at -290, adjusted down to -380, and back up to -300 or so, and is currently at -308. So it's stayed pretty stable after their initial adjustments. And Tecia Torres opened at +210, adjusted up and down to +249, and is currently at +245. Which seems about right.
Yeah, it just feels like a favorable matchup.
Yep.
For Andrade.
And that brings us to the main event, featherweight bout, Josh Emmett, Jeremy Stephens. And
we're here, Zane. We finally made it to the main event we've all been waiting for.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad they made this fight. I think it's the right test to Josh Emmett. He wins this fight. He's a legit top 10 featherweight. He loses it. He's another guy hanging around the edges of the top 15, right there with the Miles Juries, Calvin Caters, and, Mirsad Bektic's of the world.
There's nothing wrong with this fight in and of itself. It's just that there should be one more fight after this that actually feels like it means something.
Yeah.
That's all.
I'm going to pick against Josh Emmett for the exact same reason I picked against him against Ricardo Lamas. Only a little more so with Jeremy Stephens, because Stephens is not nearly the opportunist that Ricardo Lamas is, which is why Ricardo Lamas was able to go further, frankly. But Stevens has definitely become a better moment-to-moment striker than Ricardo Lamas.
Yeah.
And I think it's really like the lack of moment-to-moment striking that hurt Lamas so much against Emmett, just being willing to stay on him and throw power hooks relentlessly. Being willing to stay on Jeremy Stevens and just throw power hooks at him relentlessly has never paid off for anyone. Ever.
Like, yeah, not really. I was saying the other time too, like Jeremy Stevens is really, really durable.
Yeah.
And it makes it especially strange that like Yves Edwards was the only guy to knock him out with a really beautiful setup. I mean, it was a perfect shot that he knocked him out with, but yeah, nobody has ever done that to Jeremy Stevens except Yves Edwards.
Emmett, good credit to Emmett. He shows some ability to fight, to counter fight, like go forward and backwards, but he just throws everything to the head at the exact same speed.
Yeah.
And Stevens, one thing that really impressed the hell out of me in his Doo Ho Choi fight is after a bad round against Doo Ho Choi, and like he did this thing where he just like threw this sloppy kick and like fell on his ass after it in round 2. And you could see he was just like, calm down. And for the next 2 minutes, it was jabs and low kicks and body punches.
Yeah.
And jabs and low kicks and body punches, which opened up that hook to the head that put him away. And I think Stevens has learned a lot more, like we've seen in his fight with Gilbert Melendez, in the fight with Doo Ho Choi, after that fight with Renato Moicano, really, is Stevens being more willing to just be like, okay, be patient and stick to some simple tools from range to set up your power shots. You don't just need to throw nothing but power over and over again. And so I think as long as he can do that, and even if he doesn't, because Emmett's just going to walk in and throw heat at his head, Stevens is going to have way too many opportunities to crack him really hard. So,
yeah, it's hard to disagree with any of that. Josh Emmett, I do want to address one thing. I've seen a surprising number of people thinking that Josh Emmett is going to out wrestle Jeremy Stevens.
Emmett doesn't wrestle.
Yeah, Emmett will wrestle some. Like he certainly hit some shots, and he uses it as like a mix-up tactic, I think.
Yeah.
He's an alpha male fighter, so I have no doubt that there's sorry, I have a cat knocking my microphone aside. I have no doubt that there is some quality to his wressling game.
Oh yeah, he was a good amateur wrestler.
Sure, okay. Yeah, but it's not his style as a fighter. No. Would he maybe try to go against type to use it when it really made sense? Sure, but then you have to ask, can he out wrestle Jeremy Stevens?
That would depend on whether or not Stevens is thinking about it. I mean, as we know with Stevens, his ability to wrestle is entirely based on whether or not he expects his opponent to wrestle.
That's true. So maybe there's an opening there for Emmett to hit those takedowns. But is there a cat literally in front of the camera right now?
It was for a second. It was a good, yeah, there we go.
Okay. You can throw cats, Zane. It's okay. They're not like dogs. They're definitely not like people. You don't have to think about it. So, Jeremy Stevens, I think, can probably stuff Josh Emmett's takedowns, unless Emmett like goes for 2 rounds striking or something and is really smart and really evasive. It's just not stylistically what I expect from Emmett, though. There's adaptability, but not really. It's like very surface level adaptability.
Well, and I mean, if he got takedowns, I don't know what he would do with them. Like Emmett's not a top control, like the alpha male style that they teach is you get the takedown, you look for a submission immediately, you go back to standing, you reset and you get another takedown. And that's how Josh Emmett fights. I mean, when he dropped Felipe Aranches, and, when he's had success doing that otherwise in his past fights, it's always like, okay, I got a takedown. Is there an immediate opportunity to make something out of this? Yeah. No, then I'm just going to let you back up and reset. And like that, like, I don't see that being a problem for Jeremy Stevens. Jeremy Stevens, it's usually much more like, I didn't expect you to take me down, and now I'm being systemically out grappled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very good point. The alpha male playbook doesn't even include top control as a priority, unless you're Uriah Faber. And the weird thing at Alpha Male seems to be one fighter of like the previous generation has an impressive ability and then totally does not pass it on to the next generation of Alpha Male fighters. But really, like Jeremy Stephens is a good striker. The point you made about Ricardo Lamas is very, very strong because Lamas has succeeded overall better at featherweight because he's had more success overall because he is an overall better fighter. He is more adaptable, a better opportunist, where if there's an opportunity that arises in any phase, he can take advantage of it and will do so very quickly. And it's just generally fairly well put together strategically. But tactically, as a striker, Jeremy Stephens is far superior. He really is. Like his punches are a lot tighter. His combinations are put together thoughtfully. He's not like reaching.
Especially at this point, like I think just in the past couple, like he has gone through a continued evolution to being a better fighter.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the only time that that's not true is when Jeremy Stephens is just totally flat. But I hope I have a little reason to believe that we're getting past the point of that happening, that Jeremy Stephens is now well and truly becoming like crafty veteran Jeremy Stephens.
Yeah, that the Doo Ho Choi fight gave me a lot of that hope because that was one where he did come out, he looked flat. He looked like he was just not really ready to, he didn't take seriously what his opponent was offering him and was just trying to wing it and like get him out of there in a hurry. And then he sat down and was like, okay, wait, no, jabs, low kicks, work the body, bam, there's a knockout. You know? Yeah,
that's the impression you got, is that from what he was saying before the fight, he didn't think that he was going to struggle with Doo Ho Choi. He did. He lost the first round. And then in the corner, you know, like Eric Del Fiero was like, hey, remember that Hanato Moicano fight? Let's not do that again. And Jeremy Stephens listened. He learned from that experience and went out and fought a very intelligent second round. And I think that is just that Josh Emmett doesn't have enough surprises in his game to keep that from happening unless Jeremy Stephens regresses, and I just don't see it happening. I just think Jeremy Stephens too powerful, too good as an aggressive fighter, too durable, and too crafty. Not going to fall into the same traps that Lamas did. And again, I would probably still pick Lamas to beat Emmett if they rematched by just approaching the fight differently. So, Stephens.
All right. Odds on this fight. Jeremy Stephens is the favorite, opened at -130 and fell down to -142 and has slowly drifted, continuing downward to -162. Emmett opened at +1 or -110, adjusted up to +114, and has continued to go upwards, currently at +134. I like those odds getting wider. I think they could get a little bit wider than that. You know, Emmett is dangerous. He's got power and he works at a fast pace and he throws a lot. So there's a danger there, but like that's just not a style that has beat Jeremy Stephens to date. So,
yep.
All right. Well, on that note, you can find me on Twitter at TheZaneSimon. You can find Connor on Twitter at BoxingBush, BUSCH. You can find both of us over at BloodyElbow.com. Give us a like, thumbs up on YouTube down there. And subscribe to our YouTube channel, MMANation.com, DOTCOM. That's where you get all the latest Bloody Elbow shows, videos, news, analysis, all that stuff we do week in, week out. After this, I believe we have... no, not a week off. After this, it's UFC 222.
We're almost hoping for a week off there. Wouldn't that be nice?
Hoping. After that, we get a week off. But so next week, it's UFC 222, Cyborg versus Kunitskaya. Edgar Ortega, a fun, reasonably fun pay-per-view. I'm looking forward to it. I mean, obviously, like all the pay-per-views these days, it's the two main co-main event and then a bunch of fights that you're kind of like, I don't really, whatever. But you know, we'll be back with Vivisection and Heavy Hands and Care Don't Care and If I Did It and all our regular shows week in, week out. So thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.